let's try finish this video. It's very hot, 30 degrees, and I close my door. Yes, I'm uploading some farming simulator video. Yes, let's try finish this Roman Empire. I got to page 40, but I go 2 pages back because I did not remember. Because I'm always so sleepy when I get up, and it's 30 degrees hot in my apartment. It's always so hot in my apartment. And always I'm very sleepy in the morning, and then I have to stay in a very hot apartment the whole day. I don't like that, but I don't have air conditioning. So let's try finish this. I was supposed to make some video about the Roman Empire in my language Danish, but I'm too tired and hot today. Just like to finish and upload this video. Then I will play farming simulator.
Decorative arts for luxury consumers included fine pottery, silver and bronze vessels and implements, and glassware. The manufacture of pottery in a wide range of quality was important to trade and employment, as were the glass and metalworking industries. Imports stimulated new regional centers of production. Southern Gaul became a leading producer of the finer red gloss pottery, terra sigillata, that was a major item of trade in 1st century Europe. 442. Glassblowing was regarded by the Romans as originating in Syria in the 1st century BC, and by the 3rd century, Egypt and the Rhineland had become noted for finer glass. 443. Silver cup, from the Boscorial treasure, early 1st century AD. Silver cup, from the Boscorial treasure, early 1st century AD. Finely decorated Gallo-Roman terra sigillata bowl. Finely decorated Gallo-Roman terra sigillata bowl. Gold earrings with gemstones, 3rd century. Gold earrings with gemstones, 3rd century. Glass cage cup from the Rhineland, 4th century. Glass cage cup from the Rhineland, 4th century. Performing arts. All-male theatrical troupe preparing for a masked performance, on a mosaic from the house of the tragic poet in Roman tradition. Borrowed from the Greeks, literary theatre was performed by all-male troupes that used face masks with exaggerated facial expressions that allowed audiences to see how a character was feeling. Such masks were occasionally also specific to a particular role, and an actor could then play multiple roles merely by switching masks. Female roles were played by men in drag, travesty. Roman literary theatre tradition is particularly well represented in Latin literature by the tragedies of Seneca. The circumstances under which Seneca's tragedies were performed are however unclear. Scholarly conjectures range from minimally staged readings to full production pageants. More popular than literary theatre was the genre-defying mimus theatra, which featured scripted scenarios with free improvisation, risk language and jokes, sex scenes, action sequences, and political satire, along with dance numbers, juggling, acrobatics, tightrope walking, striptease, and dancing bears. 444. Unlike literary theatre, mimus was played without masks, and encouraged stylistic realism in acting. Female roles were performed by women, not by men. 445. Mimus was related to the genre called pantomimus, an early form of story ballet that contained no spoken dialogue. Pantomimus combined expressive dancing, instrumental music and a sung libretto, often mythological, that could be either tragic or comic. 446. Trio of musicians playing an aulos kambala and tympanum, mosaic from Pompeii. Although sometimes regarded as foreign elements in Roman culture, music and dance had existed in Rome from earliest times. 447. Music was customary at funerals, and the tibia, Greek aulos, a woodwind instrument, was played at sacrifices to ward or fill influences. 448. Song, Carmen, was an integral part of almost every social occasion. The Carmen Saeculare of Horace, commissioned by Augustus, was performed publicly in 17 BC by a mixed children's choir. Music was thought to reflect the orderliness of the cosmos, and was associated particularly with mathematics and knowledge. 449. Various woodwinds and brass instruments were played, as were stringed instruments such as the cithara, and percussion. 448. The cornu, a long tubular metal wind instrument that curved around the musician's body, was used for military signals and on parade. 448. These instruments are found in parts of empire where they did not originate and indicate that music was among the aspects of Roman culture that spread throughout the provinces. Instruments are widely depicted in Roman art. 450. The hydraulic pipe organ, hydraulis, was one of the most significant technical and musical achievements of antiquity, and accompanied gladiator games and events in the amphitheater, as well as stage performances. It was among the instruments that the Emperor Nero played. 448. Although certain forms of dance were disapproved of at times as non-Roman or unmanly, dancing ways embedded in religious rituals of archaic Rome, such as those of the dancing armed Salian priests and of the Arval brothers, priesthoods which underwent a revival during the Principate. 451. Ecstatic dancing was a feature of the international mystery religions, particularly the cult of Cybele as practiced by her eunuch priests the Galli. 452. And of Isis. In the secular realm, dancing girls from Syria and Cadiz were extremely popular. 453. Like gladiators, entertainers were infames in the eyes of the law, little better than slaves even if they were technically free. Stars, however, could enjoy considerable wealth and celebrity, and mingled socially and often sexually with the upper classes, including emperors. 454. Performers supported each other by forming guilds, and several memorials for members of the theatre community survive. 455. Theatre and dance were often condemned by Christian polemicists in the later empire. 447. And Christians who integrated dancer traditions and music into their worship practices were regarded by the Church Fathers as shockingly pagan. 456. Saint Augustine is supposed to have said that bringing clowns, actors, and dancers into a house was like inviting in a gang of unclean spirits. 457. Literacy, books, and education. Estimates of the average literacy rate in the empire range from 5 to 30% or higher, depending in part on the definition of literacy. 458, 459, 460. The Roman obsession with documents and public inscriptions indicates the high value placed on the written word. 461, 462, z. The imperial bureaucracy was so dependent on writing that the Babylonian Talmud declared if all seas were ink, all reeds were pen, all skis parchment, and all men scribes, they would be unable to set down the full scope of the Roman government's concerns. 464. Laws and edicts were posted in writing as well as read out. Illiterate Roman pride in literacy was displayed in portraiture through emblems of reading and writing, as in Thais' example of a couple from Pompeii, portrait of Terentius Neo. Subjects would have someone such as a government scriber, read or write their official documents for them. 459, 465. Public art and religious ceremonies were ways to communicate imperial ideology regardless of ability to read. 466. The Romans had an extensive priestly archive, and inscriptions appear throughout the empire in connection with statues and small votives dedicated by ordinary people to divinities, as well as on binding tablets and other magic spells, with hundreds of examples collected in the Greek magical papyri. 467. The military produced a vast amount of written reports and service records. 468. And literacy in the army was strikingly high. 469. Urban graffiti, which include literary quotations, and low-quality inscriptions with misspellings and solecisms indicate casual literacy among non-elites. 470, AA, 80. In addition, numeracy was necessary for any form of commerce. 462, 471. Slaves were numerate and literate in significant numbers, and some were highly educated. 472. Books were expensive, since each copy had to be written out individually on a roll of papyrus, volumen, by scribes who had apprenticed to the trade. 473. The Codex, a book with pages bound to a spine, was still a novelty in the time of the poet Martial, 1st century AD, 474, but by the end of the 3rd century was replacing the volumen, 475, and was the regular form for books with Christian content. 476. Commercial production of books had been established by the Late Republic, 477, and by the 1st century AD certain neighborhoods of Rome were known for their bookshops, tabernae librarii, which were found also in western provincial cities such as Lugdunum, present-day Lyon, France. 478. The quality of editing varied wildly, and some ancient authors complain about error-ridden copies. 479, as well as plagiarism or forgery, since there was no copyright law. 477. Our skilled slave copyist, Servus Literatus, could be valued as highly as 100,000 sesterces. 480. Reconstruction of the writing tablet. Stylus was used to inscribe letters into the wax surface for drafts, casual letter writing, and school work, while texts meant to be permanent were copied onto papyrus. Collectors amassed personal libraries, 481, such as that of the Villa of the Papyri in Herculaneum, and a fine library was part of the cultivated leisure, ocean, associated with the villa lifestyle. 482. Significant collections might attract in-house scholars. Lucian mocked mercenary Greek intellectuals who attached themselves to Philistine Roman patrons. 483. An individual benefactor might endow a community with a library. Pliny the Younger gave the city of Comum a library valued at 1 million sesterces, along with another 100,000 to maintain it. 484. Imperial libraries housed in state buildings were open to users as a privilege on a limited basis and represented a literary canon from which disreputable writers could be excluded. 485. Books considered subversive might be publicly burned. 486. And Domitian crucified copyists for producing works deemed treasonous. 487. Literary texts were often shared aloud at meals or with reading groups. 488. Scholars such as Pliny the Elder engaged in multitasking by having works read aloud to them while they dined, bathed or traveled, times during which they might also dictate drafts or notes to the secretaries. 489. The Multivolumatic Knights of Aulus Gellius is an extended exploration of how Romans constructed their literary culture. 490. The reading public, recitations, expanded from the once through the 3rd century, and while those who read for pleasure remained a minority, they were no longer confined to a sophisticated ruling elite, reflecting the social fluidity of the empire as a whole and giving rise to consumer literature meant for entertainment. 491. Illustrated books, including erotica, were popular, beautifully represented by extant fragments. 492. Primary education. A teacher with 2 students, as a third arrives with his loculus, a writing case that would contain pens, inkpot and a sponge to correct errors. 493. Traditional Roman education was moral and practical. Stories about great men and women, or cautionary tales about individual failures, were meant to instill Roman values. Mors maiorum. Parents and family members were expected to act as role models, and parents who worked for a living passed their skills on to their children, who might also enter apprenticeships for more advanced training in crafts or trades. 494. Formal education was available only to children from families who could pay for it, and the lack of state intervention in access to education contributed to the low rate of literacy. 495. Young children were attended by a pedagogus, or less frequently a female pedagoga, usually a Greek slave or former slave. 496. The pedagogue kept the child safe, taught self-discipline and public behavior, attended class and helped with tutoring. 497. The Emperor Julian recalled his pedagogue Mardonius, a Gothic eunuch slave who reared him from the age of 7 to 15, with affection and gratitude. Usually, however, pedagogues received little respect. 498. Primary education in reading, writing, and arithmetic might take place at home for privileged children whose parents hired or bought a teacher. 499. Others attended a school that was public though not state-supported, organized by an individual schoolmaster, a ludemagister, who accepted fees from multiple parents. 500. Vernae, home-born slave children, might share in home or public schooling. 501. Schools became more numerous during the empire and increased the opportunities for children to acquire an education. 502. School could be held regularly in a rented space, or in any available public niche, even outdoors. Boys and girls received primary education generally from ages 7 to 12, but classes were not segregated by grade or age. 503. For the socially ambitious, bilingual education in Greek as well as Latin was a must. 502. Quintilian provides the most extensive theory of primary education in Latin literature. According to Quintilian, each child has inborn ingenium, a talent for learning or linguistic intelligence that is ready to be cultivated and sharpened, as evidenced by the young child's ability to memorize and imitate. The child incapable of learning was rare. To Quintilian, ingenium represented a potential best realized in the social setting of school, and he argued against homeschooling. He also recognized the importance of play in child development, AB, and disapproved of corporal punishment because it discouraged love of learning, in contrast to the practice in most Roman primary schools of routinely striking children with a cane, fibula, or birch rod for being slow or disruptive. 504. Secondary education. At the age of 14, upper-class males made their rite of passage into adulthood, and began to learn leadership roles in political, religious, and military life through mentoring from a senior member of their family or a family friend. 505. Higher education was provided by grammatici or rhetores. 506. The grammaticus or grammarian taught mainly Greek and Latin literature, with history, geography, philosophy or mosaic from Pompeii depicting the Academy of Plato mathematics treated as explications of the text.